Today is April the 23rd, 2018. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University, and today I'm in Ardmore, Oklahoma, Carter County, to speak with Creede Speake, Jr., and this is part of our Oklahoma Conservation Heritage Oral History Project, so thank you for meeting with me today. Let's begin with learning when and where you were born.
I was born here in Ardmore, June the 17th, 1924.
1924. And what did your parents do for a living?
My dad had just gone broke in a cattle business and got a job with the Ardmore Oil Company.
Okay. And your mom?
To survive.
To survive. Did you have siblings?
Huh?
Did you have brothers and sisters?
No. I'm an only child with 3 sisters. We, over my lifetime, we adopted 3 of my cousins.
Oh, okay.
As mother's siblings passed away, we ended up with their daughters. So I actually had, and I call them sisters. They are my sisters.
They younger?
Older.
They're older?
No, they're not. Well, both. Some of them are younger, and 2 of them are younger, and 1 of them is older.
Well, being the only boy, did you get picked on a little bit?
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. But I enjoyed every minute of it.
Sure.
Really did.
Well, so then were you raised on a farm or in town?
I was raised out in the mountains, in the Arbuckle Mountains.
Okay.
Where my granddad had settled when he came to Indian Territory.
Okay, and you said that was in
1883.
83.
And when we became a state in 1907, I assumed Granddad was appointed one of the county commissioners here in Carter County, because I have no record or don't remember anything about an election or anything. So I assumed the governor appointed those 3.
And what was his name?
His was Alan Wright Speake. Alan Wright.
Alan Wright Speake.
And he passed away in 1909 when the courthouse here in Carter County was dedicated. And so the courthouse is dedicated, a big old marble plaque, and they're dedicated to him because he died with a ruptured appendix in 1909.
And they had come here from where?
My grandparents on my dad's side, they came from east in your country, Tennessee.
Okay.
And came to Texas. Did I say my dad's side?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, I'm wrong. They came from Tennessee to, they were on the Trail of Tears, were part Cherokee.
Okay.
And, but grandmother married a half-blood, I believe, Cherokee, and they left the Trail of Tears and went to Missouri, and then came to Texas and came across into Oklahoma, into Indian Territory.
That's a hard route to come, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yep. And my grandparents on my mother's side came across from Texas.
Okay. Have any idea how they met?
Seems like I've heard that.
Probably a church or a barn dance.
Probably.
That's okay.
I was looking at some stuff for a friend of mine that's going to do a memorial service at the church where I go for Memorial Day, and he was wanting to know about one of my uncles that was killed in World War I. And last night I took him some pictures that my daughter took of the cemetery in France. And it's immaculate. Their cemeteries are kept.
Hmm.
And Debbie, my daughter, when they got over there, they didn't know how to get to the cemetery, Argonne Forest Cemetery. You probably heard of Argonne Forest. He was killed in Ardmore Forest just 1 week before the armistice. And they called, or Deb called, to see how to get there, and they asked her who they were going to look for, and she told them. And when they got there, they had sandblasted the names where they knew they were going to take pictures, I guess. But you can see that one and all the ones in the background. You can't see a name. but I mean, everything was in a row. Any way you look, but she took pictures of every way, and every row is straight. Everything white and mowed. It's unreal. And I've wondered who does that. Who takes care of that? Do we take care of that?
I don't know.
And I can't find out.
Yeah, maybe there's volunteers.
Could be.
Yeah.
But whoever it is, it's fantastic how nice it is.
And that was an uncle on your mother's side or your dad's
On
side?
my dad's side.
Your dad's side.
That's another kind of a funny deal. He was my mother's. Well, I don't think they were engaged, but Uncle Earl and Mother had been together during high school. And when Uncle Earl was killed, well, Dad just being a year older, I mean, a year younger than Uncle Earl, well, he married Mother, so I almost,
You were going to be a Speake one way or the other?
One way or the other, yeah. Because, always when they'd ask how old my mother was and how old my dad was, Mother was always 2 years older than Dad. But that's how it all happened.
That's the way it happens. Yeah, my mother was too, so.
Really?
Yeah, so you were born in 24. Where did you go to elementary school?
In Woodford.
Was it a one-room school?
No, that was Woodford School was a 2-story, a full 12 grade.
1 through 12 in the same
1
building?
through 12. Yeah, it was a big frame building. Actually, it was 2-story, but in the middle there was an apartment where the principal or superintendent lived in the school building. But the elementary was on the ground floor. High school was upstairs.
Okay.
And Mother, you talk about one-room schools. My mother taught a one-room school.
Here in Carter County?
Yeah. And a little they called it LC school. Nobody that I've ever found can tell me where the name came from.
Huh.
But it was up in the mountains, and she and another lady taught 8 grades.
And what was your mom's name?
Jessie.
Jessie. Okay. And so you graduated from high school in 32, 33?
41.
41. Do my math, okay.
Yeah. Because I ended up graduating from high school up at Barnesville, Oklahoma, up in Osage County. I got a summer job up there. One of my uncles was a superintendent, I guess, at the refinery there, and he called me and wanted to know if I wanted a summer job. And so I went up there cutting weeds. They called him grass gooser. And it was the coach there at the high school he had a summer job, and he was my boss, and he taught me into staying there because I'd been a very good football player. So.
Okay. Well, Barnesville, that's a long way from here.
It's right about 15 miles outside of Bartlesville. You're probably familiar with Bartlesville. It's just 15 miles southwest of Bartlesville, the same with Pawhuska, the county seat up there.
I think Barnesdale is a town, has a pump jack in the middle of the
And you know, that doesn't mean anything with this, but we had, I had a real good friend. I never did date her or anything, but we swam a lot together, played tennis together, just a real friend. And she put together our 50th anniversary. And I wasn't gonna go to it because I was just up there, 1 year, or not even a year. And my wife made me go because again, had spent so much time putting that thing together. And I got the picture of that well in the middle of the street. They had one a picture of it. I hand painted, I think. I still got it. I was the least changed in 50 years. I was voted the least changed. So I got that. That's in my office out there.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got good memories.
Yeah. So when you graduated from high school, did you have plans on what you would do?
And they all changed at Pearl Harbor.
Mm. Yeah.
They all changed at Pearl Harbor. And I had started high school there at Barnesville, and Pearl Harbor happened, and I wanted to fly. And the superintendent, I talked to the superintendent and told him that I wanted to fly. I didn't ask him to do anything, but he called me or called me in the office a few days later and said, Creede, said, if you want to go over to OSU or Oklahoma A&M, said, I'll let you graduate in midterm here. Because you've taken 5 subjects where you went to school before and here, and she said you've got excellent grades, and said I'll do what it takes to get the transcript over to where you can go. So I just actually did a half a year of my senior year and then went to A&M.
And how long were you at A&M?
The first
1 year?
The one and a half year.
Half a year.
Yeah. And I've tried to remember how I got into the naval aviation, because you had to have 2 years, required 2 years of college. But somehow I got to take a test down in Dallas. They sent me down to Dallas and took a test, and I passed there, and then was in a naval air cadet from then on.
Had you flown before then? I mean, did you know how to be a pilot?
A little bit. I knew I'd flown enough I wanted to fly.
Okay. Well, how did you get that opportunity to fly?
Well, I became a naval aviation cadet.
Oh, before that though, while you were in high school, did you learn how to fly?
Yeah, I had a friend that had that old Piper Cub.
Okay.
And he let me fly in it. And,
got the bug.
So I had the bug. I really did. And you know what? From day one, I either wanted to be a horseback or building model airplanes. That's all I wanted to do. So I got to do everything I wanted to do.
You got to do both.
Yeah. And you know, day before yesterday, my friend from San Antonio visited with me a lot. Known each other forever, and she asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, I'm sitting there watching Barbara Bush's funeral. She said, Creede, why do you want to watch a funeral? I said, well, it's such a parallel between me and Bush that I just feel like I'm part of it, because what he did and when he did and when Barbara went, the same day, we were married about the same time. And actually, I graduated with him.
Same year?
but I didn't know him. Same day,
Same day.
May 23rd, 43. But I didn't know him because I was in a fighter squadron and training, and he was in torpedo bombers, so I never did know him.
You were in the same place, though?
Yeah,
Same
in
place?
Pensacola, yeah. And being a B and a S weren't even close. And the last one, the rest of it is all alphabetically, so.
So you had to go to the Pacific, or where did you have to?
Pacific. Yeah. We all, yeah. The Navy or Marine Corps didn't do much in Europe. There's one or two squadrons that did some stuff in Africa, but North Africa, but that was before my time. Real early in the war.
Were you ever in real danger?
Probably not.
Probably not a good word, real danger, but danger's, anytime you're in war, it's danger, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the Marine Corps Marine pilots we were pretty well trained in close air support for ground troops. That's really what the Marine Corps was Marine Air Deal was built for, was for supporting ground troops, and we got pretty good with it.
Well, you got close enough to get shot at if you're doing.
Pretty much.
Ground.
And that way, in 1950, while all those, I don't know of any Marine fighter pilots that weren't recalled, except one or two were a doctor that I knew that didn't get recalled, but generally, really all of us got recalled.
So you had to do.
Another 4 years.
You had to do Korea then.
Yep.
Did you get shot down?
And we actually didn't in Korea we didn't engage any Russians, because what we were flying, I was flying the old Panther jet, and it wasn't good enough for you didn't want to mess with it. So we just did close air support for the ground troops. But I got 6 killed in World War II.
Long way from Carter County, huh?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we ended up on Okinawa, and actually ended up on 20 of us from Okinawa, when MacArthur did the deal with the Emperor or whatever it was. They sent 20 of us from my squadron up to Yokosuka, Japan, before the paper was signed. And we were supposed to be doing surveillance, I guess you'd call it now, because the Japanese were supposed to take all the props off the airplanes and all the hangar doors off the airfields and to be open. And we did that kind of stuff. And actually ended up doing what we'd never heard of, but when we got up there and had been there a few days, we found out that all over Japan, the villages and small towns had undocumented prisoners doing menial work, street work, and whatever. And so they rigged up an old Navy PB-4Y with an amplifier or a loudspeaker, and they'd fly a 5-degree sector in the morning and tell them the war was over and what kind of markings to put out. And that afternoon, a couple of us would fly that same sector and look for those markings. And so we ended up getting a lot of prisoners.
Wow.
There were, and kind of Marine Corps type deal. With, I wasn't with but Walker was, my wingman was. And they didn't want to come in. They'd taken over the town, had all the geishas and all the sake they wanted. Said come back next week. Oh God, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But you know, how odd things happen. My wingman was from Canyon, Texas, Bay Walker. And we didn't make that trip, we didn't make that flight that afternoon, but when the flight got back, well, I believe it was Larson came in and said, Walk said, we picked up an old wolf from West Texas today. His name's Walker. Well, he told me about his brother being killed in Philippines. That's at Creede or whatever that, when this surrendered. And they thought he was dead. And it was his brother. He jumped up and went over there, and it was his brother who had survived the war and been transferred to Japan.
Wow.
Small world.
Small world.
Small world. And when they sent him, the skipper, our squadron commanders, let him come home with his brother.
That's a kind heart. Yes.
Sure was. Sure was.
So you had to do 2 4-year terms, tours?
Yeah. Yeah, 4 and 41 to 46 and then 50 to 51.
Well, while you were at OSU, did you take aviation? I mean, they had the Flying Aggies, I think, at that.
No, they didn't.
That time they didn't.
Before time.
Okay.
Now they were talking about doing that, and I was interested in it, but it didn't happen before I left there.
Okay.
But.
And then here, you had something to do with Lloyd Noble and his hangar?
You've been around.
I look a little bit.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I guess, or maybe before, I'd ride a bicycle over to Springer to the airport where Lloyd Noble kept his airplanes, and I knew one of his pilots real well. He taught a friend of mine to fly there at Woodford in an old World War I Jenny, the old biplanes. And I'd go over and I'd mop a little oil and shine a little on airplanes. And if they had a short flight to maybe Tulsa or Wichita Falls or some short flight, well, I'd get to ride and act like I was flying. and they'd let him fly.
Without your parents knowing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I knew. And that's when I got to know Mr. Noble.
Okay.
Really did. And then that Noble Foundation, you're probably familiar with it. Mm-hmm. When he formed that thing, well, I used that. I was one of their first cooperators out there. Learned a lot. A lot of it I used, and a lot of it I didn't use. But it's been a blessing for this country, us guys in agriculture.
Sure.
Really is.
Well, in the 30s, that would be when the Dust Bowl was going on, when you would be going up in the plane? In the 30s?
In the late 30s.
Late 30s.
Yeah, and I started going over there in about 36, I think. 36 or 37 when I was early in high school or late in grade school. But I never ride a bicycle 10 miles, so whatever. But yeah, I've got a picture there in my office there with one of the old Jennies and Art Oakley taught me, and it let me fly with them out there.
Did you have a parachute?
No parachute.
No parachute.
I never even think they'd work. Yeah, and that's bad. I ended up being a parachute officer in the squadron. But that's just something they had to name somebody. So that's what it was.
So between the time you came back from World War II and then Korea, what did you do during that time span?
Well, this is kind of a long story. I was going back to school. I was when I was in college up there, I was in aeronautical engineering, and I was going to go back, and I did go back. But I got married during the war, and Betty and I had a little boy. He was born just at the end of the war, and I went up to Stillwater, and and enrolled and got a class with an old prof that I had known before the war, and I actually worked for him. I graded descriptive geometry plates and stuff like that for him, and we were pretty close. And I got in one of his classes, and I was there, I guess about a week. I think I'd made 2 or 3 classes, and he said, Mr. Speake said, I need you after class. So I stayed, and after everybody left, I said, Prof, what have I done now? He shook his head. He said, you haven't done nothing. I said, I've had you 3 sessions, and you haven't heard a word I said. I said, I've got them right here in my notes. He said, you don't make any difference. You still haven't heard anything. Said, you've been watching the birds and the girls and what have you. And said, you don't belong here. And I said, are you telling me to go home? He said, go home till fall. This was midterm in January. He said, go home and get your feet on the ground and come back. And said, then we'll go. And so when I came back, I hitchhiked back to Ardmore here and didn't want to call the folks to come, nobody had a car then, to come and get me. I thought I'd find somebody on the street and hitch a ride at home. And I did. I met a barber that had cut my hair back when I was young, before he moved to Ardmore. And I had actually taken his daughter to a movie or something. I hadn't really dated her, but I knew her well. And she was the same age I was. And he asked me what I was doing in town. And I said, well, I'm waiting, trying to catch a ride, and told him just what I told you, the story about the prof. And he said, well, what are you going to do fall? I said, oh, I can find a little place lease. I'll give me a few cows and mess with them till fall. And he said, seriously? And I said, yeah. He said, you know the old Major's place out of Poolville? And I said, sure. He said, no, my man Oscar real well. He had a general store there at Poolville, which was 7 or 8 miles from where I lived. And he said, you know his old ranch? And I said, yeah, had 2,000, 2,500 acres, something like that. He said, well, that his family had sent him to the asylum at Norman. And I'm the court-appointed trustee. And said, I've been trying for 3 years to lease that place, that 2,500 acres. And I said, that's a good place, Pat. He said, I know it. I said, you know it well. And, but I said, I can't get anybody interested in it. I said, why? Well, the old man had a common law wife. And everybody was afraid of her. And they didn't want to even talk about it because they didn't want to put up with Margaret. And I'd known her as a kid from that side. Because that was on the pool, was on the west side of that ranch where my granddad worked. Came from Port State. And we'd go over and get us just a red soda pop or something when we get close. So I knew Margaret, knew anyway, I knew them both. So when I got back to the house, well, I borrowed Dad's car. And I went up there and knocked on Margaret's door, and she hadn't seen me in 4 years or 5. And, big old hugs and all that kind of stuff. Because I loved her, she was sweet. And she said, come in here. So I just made a pot of coffee. So I went in there and we got sitting there and talking. I said, what in the world are you coming up here to see me for? So what are you doing up here? And I told her the story, and she got tickled. Said, that tickles me to death that everybody's scared of me. And I said, what if I lease this place? Can we get along? She said, Lord in mercy, yes. So I didn't go back to college. Mm-hmm. I leased that 2,500 acres. And then when she told me that she'd lease it to me, why, Pat said he'd lease it to me for 50 cents an acre. And I wandered right then. I said, where am I gonna get $1,250 and some money to buy some cows with? But found a good banker and what have you. Don't have to go away to college. I've wished a time or two I had, but not really. I've had a better life.
Wasn't in the cards.
Yeah, that's right. Can't change it either. A lot of time. No, I really have. I've had a good life. A really good life.
Well, I read somewhere that you managed a service station for a while.
Yeah, when I leased that old place where I needed something to get a little income. I took out the old service station there, my own, mainly fixed flats.
Yeah.
At 50 cents a head, 50 cents flat. Old gravel road, it was good. It was groceries.
Yeah.
Really was.
Did you end up buying the place, the 2,500 acre?
No, I didn't get to buy it. The old man had a son that was in California, and I had it for 15 years. And then when Jack Majors came back, he took it back over. No, he didn't. Mr. Majors had passed away when Jack came back, and he and his sister split it up, half and half, and then they sold it. And so I lost that. But in the meantime, I'd started leasing small places, whatever would become available, and do them. And so I had a pretty good start of leases only after I lost that. But that 2,500 acres is one got you
started.
Got me.
And you've been a rancher ever since?
Ever since.
Did it scare you some since your dad had lost his?
You know, he didn't tell me that.
Oh, you didn't know that? Okay.
I didn't know that till later on.
Later.
But I got to going through some of Dad's old papers and stuff that Mother had, and I saw this way bill where he'd sold those steers for $2 a head in 1924, the year. So I put two and two together. That's when he went to work for Humble pumping, and he ended up doing that the rest of his life.
Well, when you first got this 2,500 acres, did you do any conservation practices on it?
It was strictly pasture.
Strictly.
And we took care of it, didn't overgraze. And I had a neighbor out there that I had never known before. He'd inherited a place that joins where I live now. Where I own now, Bon Talbert. And he came down and introduced himself to me and said, we'll be doing a lot of things that haven't been done before up on the ranch. And he said, you need to watch, and Gilbert Wallace was his foreman. He said, you check with Gilbert and see what we're doing, and watch what we're doing. And said, a lot of it will work, and a lot of it probably won't work. And said, you can't afford to do it. But said, I've got a law practice, and I've got some oil. And he married Lloyd Noble's sister. And he said, I married well. So I've got a law practice and some oil, and I married well. And so I watched what they did, and they started weed spraying, and which was unheard of at that time. I'd never heard of it. And did a lot of things that, like he said, I couldn't afford, but he was really a blessing to me. And
did it already have terraces, or that wasn't part of it?
No, the lease that I got was all pasture, native grass, all native grass. None of it ever. Maybe a little corner or two had been farmed, just a little bit, but not really. But I started following Mr. Talbert's advice, building bonds, and we never did any terraces. Didn't want to do any terraces, but I built I think 4 ponds on that lease that, because it didn't have any running water or anything on it, so it was ponds.
What kind of equipment would you have to do that?
I had to hire it done.
Hire?
Yeah, no, I didn't have anything. Didn't have anything but a couple of horses and a pickup.
That's what's, do you remember your first tractor?
Yeah. First tractor I ever drove was, my dad had bought an old 38 model F-20 farm tractor from a neighbor over there, and I'd never been on a tractor, but that's the first one I ever drove. But
About how old were you?
when I first drove it, I just back from war.
So, in your
When I came back, Dad had bought that thing, and he had a mower on it, and I ran that thing, you know, mowed some grass, mowed some hay.
Did it have rubber tires, or was it the
It
spikes?
was the first F-20 farm haul that had rubber tires,
Rubber tires.
1938 model. All the rest of them before that had metal tires. But I kept that old thing and I kept it around, and when I started to really not using it, but I just kept it around and would crank it every once in a while, just mess around. And maybe I'd rake a little hay with it or something just to keep it going while I kept it running. And I had 2 young friends with their sons of friends of mine. And those 2, David and Mike, came out to the house one Sunday and invited me, and we sat there a little while. And I said, "What are you 2 outlaws up to today?" I said, "I know you didn't come and visit me in Betty." I said, "What do you do? What are you doing with that old F-20 farm haul?" I said, "Nothing, just keep it running and make sure it's running and drive it once in a while just to get on it." I said, "Why?" They said, "Well," said, "that makes the best pull tractor they make. You know, where they have these tractor pulls, you've heard of them, you probably maybe gone to 1 or 2. And he said, "This one had a great big bull wheel on the back." And so they went out, and I said, "What are you going to do with that thing, make a full pull tractor?" I said, "Well, we're going to turn it upside down and put a Ford Cleveland engine, V8 engine in it, and said, we're going to outpull anybody in the country." And talking about, I said, "Where's the money going to come from to do all this?" "Oh, we got to do it all." And Mike said, my dad said, "Gene," he was a friend of mine, and he built a new barn out there by Noble Foundation here. And Mike said, "Dad said we could have the north part of that shop to do the whole thing. And could do it all the time." And I said, "You guys gonna do that all by yourself?" "Oh, we got to. I haven't got any money." I said, "Well, I think both of them had a little job around a service station or something, get a little money." But I said, "Well, y'all gonna do it by yourself." I said, "Y'all are freshmen in high school." I said, "I'll give that damn thing to you because it'll keep you out of trouble until you get out of high school." And they kept me, that was back in Polaroid days, cameras. Every month or so, they'd send me a Polaroid picture of their progress. And it did, it kept them out of school, kept them out of trouble in school.
Did they win any with it?
I don't think they ever did. I don't think they ever did. I never did go to one of them. But they did, they built the thing.
So I take it you did not have sons?
I had a son, but he got Parkinson early, passed away. Had 2 daughters. I actually had 3 daughters. We lost our second little girl at birth. And
There's different times too, didn't have as much help.
Yeah.
So had you met Betty Jo in high school? Was she was from
Yeah.
here, from around here?
Yeah, we were pretty close, and I wish somehow we'd had a recorder like you're doing here now, I guess. Because we came back into States to get the carrier worked on, and they told us we were going to be there about a couple of months before they got it fixed. And so I called Betty and told her I was back in the States. I'll be out there. She said, well, I'm heading that way. And her deal, she rode a troop train from Oklahoma City to LA. Oh. Only female on the whole dadgum train. And you can imagine what went on, except you ought to hear that she was treated royally. They kept her with food and everything, and even when they got to Los Angeles and they got off the train, she'd never heard Spanish, and all she heard was Spanish. And she was scared to death. And one of these guys rented a dadgum car and took her to Santa Ana, about 50 miles, to where I told her to go. Can you believe that? Yeah. Unreal.
Yeah. Nice people in the world. There's a few.
But she said those guys treated her like royalty did.
Yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, probably.
Yep, I guess. But,
and you got married while she was out there?
Yeah, we got married as soon as she got there. She came out there to get married.
Had you asked her? Had you?
Not really. When I got out of flight school, she and my mother came down there for graduation, and we kind of talked about things a little bit, but nothing. You know, wartime wasn't any time to do that.
Right.
But she thought about it because when I told her we were going to be there 2 months, I said, well, I'm headed that way. And she borrowed money from my dad. He was all for it. She went and told Mother and Dad that she was going out there. And so Dad bought the ticket. He said, well, I'll send you out there. So we did.
And she was prepared to be a rancher's wife. Right. Was she involved with the conservation like you were later on?
She just listened to all of it. Put up with me while I went to meetings.
Well, how did you get started with it?
With the conservation deal?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it started first on at least we was using the Arbuckle district here to stake the ponds and stuff. That's when I got acquainted with it first.
Okay.
Before that, I didn't even know it existed. But anyway, I got acquainted with all the technical people here, and somehow I ended up on the board. I don't remember how. But when I was on the board, the first time I got on the board, when this Caddo flood control thing came about, for some reason they formed a Caddo watershed board separate from the Soil Conservation Board. Did some of the others do that?
I only one.
Have you heard that?
Just once, yeah.
Did you?
Similar.
Well, that's what happened. I wasn't on the Soil Conservation Board until '60, I think. But they formed that Caddo watershed board to get all the easements and stuff. And that's when I first got started on it.
Okay. That was in the 50s?
60s.
60s?
Yeah, 60s. The first one of these things I saw with my signature on it was in '60, and I forgot when it was.
Okay.
And I've been trying to think ever since I got this thing up. I can't remember who was on there with me. I know Mike Frazier was on it, and John Fish. They were on the Caddo board. And I can't come up with the others. I don't know how much was on that board. I don't even know that. But we kind of, when we first started, however we started, we tried to find somebody from each of the areas. But we had somebody from, who would have contact with local people. So, Mark Wasson came up with that. He was one of them, because he was in the lower part out here, west of Ardmore, at Heald, at Wilson. He was from Wilson. Well, we tried to get somebody from each one of the, kind of around the thing, because we knew it was going to be a problem. Because of, no money for easements or anything. The only thing a landowner got by giving easements was the water. He had control of the water.
Below or above, not above the structure, right below it, control of the water.
The permanent water.
Okay, yeah.
The permanent water.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, and most of the people we had to deal with didn't have anything, probably any land that was subject to flooding, including me. I had one little lease that I got that we farmed, that Caddo flooded on, but and it was kind of hard to sell somebody something that they weren't going to get any benefit from except the water.
Is that how you sold it?
Hard deal. Tried to get somebody we were close to. And we did, we won't talk about that, we did some other stuff.
Like what?
Fact is, we had one over there, but the largest section, site 27 was the largest one on here. And I knew the history of the thing, and then Mr. Blankenship, who owned that thing, had settled in 4 state or something, I don't know. Anyway, it's a good sized place, about 4,000 acres, something like that. And I knew when he died that he left it tied up to where none of the family could sell it, could do anything with it. But I happened to know GT, his son, who was just casually known him. He was an attorney in Oklahoma City. And so I called GT, told him what I was doing, and I actually went to see him. Kind of showed him what we were doing. He said, well, that I can't sell it. Said me or my sibling can't sell it. But he said, I'm a lawyer. And said, we can do something. I told him the benefits we're going to have, and it was the key. It was, it's the biggest one. And he said, we'll just have a friendly condemnation. I said, will that work? He said, yep, only way it'll work. I said, you can condemn it, but I can't sell it. So the landowner that owned the rest of the site, he was one that's so bad because it's going to be a big, nice lake. Beautiful lake. And so GT did the condemnation suit, and the conservation district here got owned it, but that's who he did it to. Well, we ended up selling it to Fitzgerald, who owned the rest of the site. He was wanting it so bad. So that's where we got some money to kind of do some other stuff with.
Is that the Lake Gene?
It's all legal.
Well, a lawyer came up with it, so.
Yeah.
Is that where the Lake Gene
No.
That's a different one?
No, Gene Newstead is a bigger lake now, but the city of Ardmore made it bigger. They participated in it and made it part of their water system. Lake Newstead and Lake Scott King, and they got two, 13 and 18. G. Newstead and Scott King, they're both Ardmore water supply.
as part of the watershed projects though.
Yeah, both of them. And then we were able to do on a couple of other deals that it didn't hardly cost anything. The government paid for most of that. A lot of it anyway. Many made it to where you could afford to do it. And we had 2 more sites. One of them was Mr. Taubert's that I mentioned before. He had one on him, and then so I went to see him or called him, and I said, Mr. Taubert, they go about that, and on site 7 up there. I said, you've got a lot of land below that, just tillable, farmable, hay, he didn't want to farm, but hay and stuff like that. And I said, you can make, you can double the size of that thing for almost nothing. Like, it's going to cost him $2,500 to double the size of that thing and put an irrigation pipe in it. So he did that, and there was one other we got to do that with, besides the 2 Ardmore lakes, which was a real benefit.
Are the lakes used for recreation, or is it more for water supply?
Just fish, and there's some different ones that have different things in it.
Okay.
The problem we had initially after we got those things built, why you couldn't hardly keep people out of them. They thought the government owned them.
Okay.
And the government doesn't own them. It's restricted a little bit. I mean, it's things they can't do. They can't stop up the drawdown tubes and that kind of stuff. And after that, NRC has to have access to them all the time. But we had a little problem for a few years with landowners being, having to keep people out of it if they wanted to. We've got 2 of them on us, or I've got 2 of them on me, and then I'll let people fish on it. But at first they thought, being the government building it, that they were a part of it.
So the land belongs to the landowner?
It's only an easement.
The easement.
Only an easement. And we got 28 of them built. But back on the west end up there, up there on north, past where there's all oil production. There were some sites in there at the head of Caddo that we couldn't get because of oil wells and pipelines and that kind of stuff. But we ended up getting 28 of the 30.
Well, that's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Well, before this happened, was flooding really an issue?
Really was, about once a year, sometimes twice. Get all the fences and wash out crops. If you had nobody just kind of row crop, but a lot of people had alfalfa and hay crops and stuff like that. There was some of us farmed. Yeah, down here close to Ardmore was farmed. There's some good farms out there.
So after the first shot was done, was it easier to get easements? You could see the benefit? Not really.
It never did really get easy. We used that money that we made out of that deal with Blankenship, and we ended up buying 2, maybe 3 of them. I know one of them up there, that one up on top, that farthest one up on top. It belonged to an old gentleman who was probably in his late 70s or 80s and lived in an old shack up there that was, and we ended up buying his deal and building him a house down on, and he didn't have electricity, he didn't have anything up there. And we built him a house, and we bought either a 20 or a 40 down on the highway where he'd have electricity and stuff, built him a little, I think, 1-bedroom house. He was still, some of his folks still living.
So
we used that money to do that, and then
some creativity there. figuring out what to
Get it
do.
all done, and luckily nobody got in jail.
How much of your time was spent trying to
We spent quite a bit of time,
wrangle them in?
yeah. And had a lot of help from neighbors that wanted it, and people that were gonna benefit from it, really benefit. They helped us a bunch. If they had any, you know, any friends that were part of it, or they had some stroke with them.
So did you spend a lot of time in kitchens, discussing all this, or out in the yard, or whatever, wherever?
A few sleepless nights, but otherwise, worked out pretty good, and it's really been a benefit. We've had, in the past 3 years, we've had major floods, even with this, and no telling what it would have been if we hadn't had these floods go down. And you know, back when I was growing up, I remember Caddo was always being red, just muddy water. And after these things all got put in there, it got to flowing clear.
That's a good selling point.
It really was.
Yeah.
We weren't expecting it. I was just amazed. And when a couple of years after these things were completed, Caddo would be running clear unless it was raining. Because we got that right on the head of Caddo was where we couldn't, that's in the oil field. There was 2 sites up there that were.
So then you have to worry about runoff, sediment and erosion and all that on the upper end.
Oh,
And then that'll filter down.
it's been a blessing. And we had to move some sites. We had there's one, I don't particularly remember, we had to move up the creek about, a quarter mile or half mile, because it was going to, it doesn't do away with an alfalfa field there, about 35, 40 acres. And so that was easy for him to be against it, because that was his only hay field. But we got it moved, and it ended up backing water up on me, but I took that.
Well, has it ever not worked the way it was supposed to work? And people complain? No?
I've never heard of that.
The engineers knew what they were doing?
Yep. And all these watersheds, and they had they're supposed to have, I think, a 50-year.
I read somewhere it's 50.
50-year deal.
So we're getting
That's
close.
gone.
Yeah.
That's gone. Yeah, because the last one was completed on Caddo there, on the place that I've got now, that I own now. It was in 1968.
Well, it's 50 years this year then.
Because I just happened to be by that a couple of months ago and looked at the date on it. I think it was completed in 68.
There's a plaque on it for
Every one of them's got a plaque on the drainage area, the size of the dam, 2 or 3 other things that tell what it is, and how much permanent water and how much the flood area. That's all on a plate on each one of them.
Well, so there's 26 now?
28.
28 now. Have you been to all of them? No.
Not since we're trying to. I've never been to all of them after we had completed. Usually they have to inspect them every year. And usually I take them to the ones up in my area, but there's a lot of these down here that I've never been to.
What was the biggest one? The largest one? Was that Lake Jean?
With the exception of those 2 Ardmore sites, that site 27. And with this stuff that I got, that site 27 had a solid rock spillway that I thought would never be moved. And the year before last, it was wrecked. And it cost more to fix the spillway on that than the whole project on the 20th side. But I couldn't believe it when I saw that in here.
Had it cracked, or I mean, what was it? Why was it damaged?
Oh, the overflow went around the emergency spillway.
Oh, okay.
And it was solid white rock. And I managed that ranch for a friend of mine when he was in a nursing home for about 12 years. And I saw it go around the spillway a couple of times or three when I was managing it. And I didn't think there's any way that thing would ever, I thought it was solid. I thought it was just like concrete. But it moved rock as big as this table.
Hmm. That much water.
Yeah. And it took over $1 million to repair it. I just got through with it a couple of months ago.
And who pays for that?
RCS.
The government. The government pays.
Yep. But all the costs of each one of those dams and everything, the whole project was in here, and I'll be darned if it wasn't. Just repairing that thing cost what it cost to build all those dams. But you know, back then, D7 dozer probably cost $15 an hour, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe not that much, I don't know. But, and now it'd be a couple $100 an hour. Times J.
Yes. But the benefit for it being fixed is still there.
It's really been there. And I don't know how many, I've seen it all, but how many of these deals like Caddo there are in the United States. They're everywhere.
I think I read somewhere Oklahoma took the lead on this early on.
Yeah, that's what they told us, that we're going to be Oklahoma's going to be one of the first. And when we so the district here got us together that before I was on the board, we went to a site or two that had been built before we started doing this. Cheagley Sandy right up here above the mountains. We went and visited it, I don't know, and then there was another one back west that had already been built before we decided to want to participate.
Well, besides getting easements, what else did you have to do for the board as a board member?
That's all.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, we had to get it. That's all we did. And I don't know who appointed the Caddo board. There's two, you probably noticed there's two different entities.
Two different ones.
Ardmore Conservation and Caddo Watershed Board or something.
Yep.
And I don't know who, I don't know how we got on that thing.
You volunteered.
I guess.
It wasn't a paying gig, was it?
Had mouth problems. I've had a lot of those.
You weren't paid for it though.
Oh, no.
It was your volunteer time.
Yeah. Well, I could, all of us could see the benefits of it. Yeah. I mean, for everybody. Yeah. Even though you've got no personal benefit from it at all.
It was the Caddo Creek Watershed Association. It was formed in 1964.
I guess.
1964.
Does it say who it was?
Doesn't say.
Doesn't say.
Knowing that the city had turned down a bond proposal or whatever to do the Lake of the Arbuckles, to become part of the Lake of the Arbuckles. They didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Initially, anyway.
And that came along later on, Lake of the Arbuckles. That's what, in fact, that's Ardmore's primary source of water. The one up at Sulphur, Lake of the Arbuckles. that, where the ranch my granddad was raised on when he came here from Texas, an old gentleman named Sherman Jones bought 35,000 acres of Indian excess land up in the mountains, all rocky and stuff. Because the Choctaws or Chickasaw, neither one, they were farming Indians. If they couldn't put a plow, they tell them wanted. So when the Dawes Commission separated all the land, that ended up excess land, and Mr. Jones was able to buy that 35,000 acres. And my granddad stayed with him till he was able to do that till he died. And when the Ardmore didn't have a water supply, and they were having to build a waterside dam. They call it Mountain Lake Dam up there where on Mr. Jones' property. And Mr. Jones was for the water deal, but he didn't let anybody know it. He was behind 3 years of taxes. And he finally fooled around with him and got enough money out of the city of Ardmore for the site for the dam to pay his delinquent taxes.
Wow.
Can you imagine giving 50 cents an acre for that many acres and nearly losing it for taxes?
Yeah.
Unreal.
Well, he ended up being a good businessman, though, if he figured a way out.
Oh, he was a real businessman. But he held up and got the money to.
You know all these little bitty backstories.
Yeah. Well, it's my granddad came across there from Spanish Fort, Texas, with Mr. Jones. And there's a story there if you want to hear it.
Sure.
They were probably in their early 20s, probably 21, 22. He and a friend of his, two friends, came across the river illegally into Indian Territory hunting. And when they started back, it was a flood. Red River got up. They couldn't get back across Red River, and they tried to find some place to get him, get out of the rain and stuff. And they found an old cave on the North Red River bank. And they got to prowling around in there and stumbled on an old cannon back in that cave. They got their curiosity up. And they got to prowling around in there, and they found a metal box. And the story goes, it's just a story about that it was Spanish gold, that they found Spanish gold. Granddad said it was, they found a Union payroll. That was about $10,000. So the three of them split the Spanish gold, but I'd bet Granddad knew it because he knew them and came across the river with it. But I don't know what the other two boys did with their $10,000, but Mr. Jones came across the river and bought some stuff down here south of Ringling at Cornish. Real good land. And the land started getting in Oklahoma, started appreciating a little bit. And he got to where, and he didn't want to farm anyway. He didn't like to farm, he liked cows. And so he parlayed that he bought his part at Cornish out there for this Indian land that came available up here. Parlayed that into 35,000 acres up here.
Being at the right place at the right time and making decisions.
And he was a businessman. He knew what to do. And he ended up being really wealthy, even in oils after that. But that Mountain Lake was completed in 1922, I think.
Before you were born.
But grandmother and granddad lived right below it. Mr. Jones, when granddad got where he was, in his 80s, I think, or 70s or something like that. Anyway, he was non-horseback. Well, he built him a house down there close to civilization. That was right below the dam. But,
Are most of the dams earthen, or are they?
all earthen.
Are all of them
All
earthen?
earthen.
Well, there's another, is Wild Horse watershed, is that in?
That was, we took care of that too. I don't know how we ended up getting that. I think they just gave it to us. And we got I think it was just 4 sites on there. We got the easements on those for them. And they included in the Caddo deal.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's one over here that's got this 2 point, they count those in the 29, 28. Big branch that actually doesn't flow into Caddo, it flows into Washita before it gets to Caddo. But they, some way that, cause of government or something, they had to give it a different name or something.
The Upper Bayou Creek, is that a different one?
It's different, totally. And they haven't been able to do very much with it. But I think this district has something to do with it, but we don't.
Is most of the land down here, is it wheat or cattle or cotton or what?
There's very few row crops at all
Any?
anymore. It used to be corn. The Indians always raised corn and cotton. But the boll weevil took care of the cotton
Yeah.
back there. Actually, somebody asked me here a while back, said, what did they do with their cotton? And I said, from right here where we're sitting, I can count 10 cotton gins in 10 miles. Circle. The fact is, I've got 2 ponds on what I own now that were water supply for a gin. But every little old settlement had a gin. Had a gin and a scoop.
Well, did you have to pull cotton when you were little?
I was the world's worst cotton picker. I was probably 1st grade or something, but anyway, I rode horseback to school 9 miles from the pump station up there. And no, 5 miles. And there was a lot of the kids, not a lot of them, but I think it was 5 or 6 of us rode horseback. And an old boy down south there had a horse that I wanted so bad. I mean, I wanted real bad. A lot better than the one I had. And I tried to get Dad to buy it for me. He finally gave up and said, well, you pick cotton, make enough to buy a saddle and bridle, and I'll buy the dadgum horse. He didn't think I'd do it. So I picked enough cotton there one fall to make $12.50, I believe. And bought the saddle and bridle, and Dad showed up with a horse. And I rode the little horse to school until we moved.
So it would stay at school with you? The
Well,
horse?
yeah, I guess the school had built some stalls down there. There was enough of us that were riding horses that we put in a stall when we got to school.
And then rode home.
When we weren't out there racing each other at recess or whatever. Oh yeah.
What was the horse's name?
Daybreak
Daybreak.
in black. I don't know where I came up with that. Maybe he was already named before. I don't think I named him. I think he already had that name when I bought it. When Dad bought it for me. But that was his name, Daybreak.
Didn't do what you wanted, pretty much?
He was a good horse.
Was he?
Had a lot of cow in him. Worked pretty good. You rope off of him, do anything. Pretty good horse. somebody. You know, my Betty's parents came to Tennessee. I've been back there a few times with some of their friends. But they came out here and he, I think they were about to starve dead in Tennessee back then when they came out here. And he came out here and got into the oil business. Not in the business, but working and for working oil. And actually ended up being the first go back this, Lloyd Noble was in the drilling business. Didn't have any production at all. Just straight drilling. Had, I think, 4 or 5 drilling rigs. And Mr. Creede got my father-in-law. When he came out, he got a job with a little oil company called Coal Line Oil Company. It was little, didn't amount to anything. It had, I think, 2 or 3 leases out there in Oil City. And somehow Mr. Noble bought that Coal Line Oil Company, that little one that Mr. Creede worked at. That was his only production he had for a long time, and he named it Sammy Dan. Have you seen that anywhere? Mm-hmm. Been named after his kids, Sam, Ed, and Ann. It still goes by Sammy Dan. Mm-hmm. And it's bigger and all outdoors now. But Mr. Creede started with, well, there was 3 people, my father-in-law and Sam and Troy Roberts were the first 2 employees, first 3 employees for Sammy Dan Oil Company. Mm-hmm. And they just moved from, they've been here at Ardmore all the time until last year. And they moved headquarters to Houston for some reason. When they were born here, I can't figure out why they would do that thing.
That's where all the big refineries are, but I don't know.
Yep. All different.
So as a member of the board of the Caddo Creek, Caddo Creek, I've got to say that.
Yeah, you gotta get that.
Caddo Creek.
Yeah.
Watershed Association. Did you go to conferences and meetings and stuff around the state or even out?
I used to, I don't know anymore. I don't know anymore. Fact is, I don't know what that phone call was, so I got reading and didn't answer. I've got a cousin that's down here in Dallas. She runs a horse therapy thing. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of them, but yeah.
I had never heard of it. But she's trying to get me to go on a flight with a couple of plane loads of veterans going to Washington, D.C., looking at the monuments and stuff. They fly them up there for free every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And she got me a reservation. I told her, I said, forget about it. I'm not leaving Clark County. But that was her. I know that was her. I looked at it. I saw it was her. Suzanne.
Honor flights.
Yeah, honor flight or something.
I've talked to a couple of people that went. They really enjoyed themselves.
Mm-hmm. I don't think about it.
It should be. I mean, have you been there before? If you've been before, then yeah.
Yeah, I ended up being there a lot in D.C. I was, when I came back here from the war, I was out there under a shade tree there at the house, shooting on an old horse. And there was a guy drove up in there and got out, and he was about that high, little bitty guy. Introduced himself and said, I'm Carl Albert. And said, I just came back here from war. And said, I'm gonna run for Congress. There's no way I can win, but I'm gonna run. I said, I might vote for him, but I just one vote, so. He said, no, you're not with this one vote. He said, you're going to work for me. I said, well, I'm not campaigning for you. He said, well, I'll leave you some cards and sign or two and whatever. And darn if he didn't win. And he ended up being Speaker of the House. So I had some stroke there with him over the years, and I used it. I was president of the Cattlemen's Association for 1 term or 2 terms. And I made lots of trips to Washington, and Carl did a bunch for us Cowboys. He was a Democrat, but he worked for us. And he ended up being a special friend. So I've been there a lot.
That was a good handshake.
It really was. And our lobbyist, I guess I hate to call him a lobbyist, with the National Cattlemen's Association, Bill McMillan, he knew I had that stroke with Carl. And when he became majority leader and then speaker, well, if we had anything going up there that we need some help on, Bill would call me. And you know, he was our lobbyist, I guess. I hate to use that word, but he was, and he'd never go up on the hill with me to visit Carl at all. He'd say, I don't belong here. I said, I'm a paid hand. I said, I'll make the appointments and whatever it takes to do it. But, and Carl helped us a bunch. We were about to go broke with the Australians shipping meat in here, and in 1964, we needed an import law to restrict the imports of beef into here. And anyway, we went up there, and then Bill gave me all the paperwork like this, and I told Carl what we had done. He said, well, he was majority leader then, before. That's next to the speaker, next to going to be a speaker. And he said, I can pass that bill if I can get it on the floor. But said I can't get it out of Wilbur Mills' committee, Ways and Means Committee. Said he won't let the thing out. And so they were going to have it before the committee, and Bill McMillan called me up, and so I had to, I don't know whether you know it, but when you go to one of those committee meetings, you got to, they've already read the damn thing. Every one of them has got a copy of it, of what you're going to say, but you've got to say it. And anyway, I'd been there before with Wilbur Mills. He was from Arkansas. And for some reason, he was different that day. I mean, he was squirming around. I mean, just all just moving his chair around, and he let the damn thing out of committee, and we got it passed. And so about sometime later than that, you probably saw it on TV, they called him Skinny Dipping with Fanny Fox. You remember that? Huh?
Vaguely, yeah.
You remember? Carl never did admit it, but I said, Carl, I know how you got that damn thing out of committee. You know, you don't either. He never did admit it. But I think that he knew that. He found that out and put the pressure on Wilbur. But he got our import law passed in 1964. Still in effect.
Well, as many times as you went, did you ever consider running for something?
No, running from it.
Running from it?
No, never had anything at all. But I didn't mind using Carl, and he didn't mind it either. And,
where was he from? Down around Poto, was it? No?
He died up in McAllister.
Okay.
But he was from a little old town south of there.
I was thinking Poto. Does that sound right?
No,
I mean, that's where the
close.
college is.
Yeah, no. Boat tussle.
Oh, yes, yes.
Bug tussle.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, mine's not as bad as I thought it would.
No, it isn't. Well, have you had to interact with any of the governors?
Huh?
Have you had to interact with any of the governors?
Yeah, it did, in the building. And I actually didn't have anything much to do with him, just to meet him as governor. But as senator, yes. And he did a lot for us.
For the cattlemen's or for the watershed?
Oh, for cattle.
Cattlemen.
Yeah. Yeah, Henry he was from up north. He was a wheat farmer.
Yeah, from Billings.
Billings. And I was a good friend of that after he got to where he couldn't take care of himself. Well, I had a good, the guy that used my strip out there at the house or aerial sprayer, crop duster. And his wife became a good friend. He and his wife became good friends with Betty and I. And she ended up taking care of Henry in his last years, the last 4 or 5 years. She lost her husband and took care of Henry. Eloise Boulderbach.
That name sounds familiar, yes.
Huh?
That name sounds familiar. Louise. I had done some research on Henry about 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, did you?
A little bit, yeah. Went out to his farm and interviewed his 3 daughters.
I'll be darned. I've been out there.
Yeah.
And you know, Henry was a Republican and conservative. And I was sitting there with him one day, and guess who came in to ask his advice on the bill, how to vote on the bill? Was from Minnesota. Most liberal congressman in Congress had ever been. Ran for president one time, or was going to run for president. Can't think of his name. But he came in and asked, and after he left, he had some kind of specific bill that was coming up, and he wanted to know what about it, and Henry told him, what the good part of it was and what to vote for it. And after he left, I said, what was his name? I just disliked him so much. He was such a liberal. But he says, I said, every time an ag bill comes up, here he comes. And that's the way he votes. But he realized that Henry knew the business and crossed party lines.
He did that a lot of times, Henry did.
He sure did. Good guy. And then we had one right after that. Fred Harris was as near nothing as we ever had. Go in there and talk to him and whatever, he'd tell you, oh yeah, we go vote the other way.
So you had to
And you know, he, probably if John Kennedy hadn't been killed, Fred Harris would have been his vice president. He was about 3/4 Indian. And the Kennedys were looking for a minority vice president. And Fred would have probably been, well, we heard, I was in and out of Washington a lot, and I heard a lot of scuttlebutt about that. That he was Kennedy's pick or somebody in the deal. But he was no good as a senator for us.
So you had to keep up with lots of things, sounds like.
Yeah.
And you did your ranching probably with instead of a computer, you had a pen and paper and pencil, keeping track of sales and such?
Lead pencil and...
a ledger?
No, lead pencil and a red tablet. What was one of the old red tablets we had back then. Had a name. And now,
you volunteer for too much, or?
I turned my ranch over to my grandson,
Oh, okay.
and he's sharp, good, but everything I've done in the 75 years it's taken to put that thing together is all out of date. And I told him here a couple of weeks ago, I said, he called me, I said, we're gonna do this and that. I said, Travis, I said, don't tell me what you're gonna do or how you're gonna do it. I said, just do it. I said, I turned the darn thing over to you, and I said, I'd rather not know it. So, but I'm lucky, I really am, to have somebody to follow up and take care of what, because all of my old contemporaries have gone. I'm the only one left. And what they had, however they got it, whether they inherited, whether they worked for it, however they got it, got fought over and split up, and families get across ways every way. I said, you take care of the darn thing, keep it. But you don't have any boys. All you got is girls. So maybe one of them will be a cowgirl.
Yeah, maybe. How many acres do you have?
Huh?
How many acres do you have now? Roughly.
Oh, a little over 7,000.
It's a lot to keep up with, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're all in Carter County? Pretty much?
Some in Murray.
Right.
Corner of Murray, up there.
And on those 7 acres, you have 2 or 3 water structures?
What is it? I got 3.
3.
I got two that I own and one that we lease. I lease. Probably get it, maybe. And one of those 2 that I own, ended up I had to buy it because we had a property line went right down the middle of the thing. Fact is, the actual line went right across the tower. And it belonged to a colored fellow that only had 40 acres, and he didn't want. He didn't. I didn't want him to have half a pond there and nothing, and he didn't want it either. So I bought it, and we ended up with some other stuff like that we had to buy. But all of us. We were bound to determine we were going to do this category, and you got it done.
Stick to it.
Bunch of hard head.
Headache, I'd say a few times.
Bunch of hard head. It wasn't that bad, and I got acquainted with a lot of people. Got really acquainted with a lot of people that you'd never get close to unless you started dealing with them. Ended up with a lot of good friends that I would probably never just met, but. And it ended up that I haven't heard any bad stuff about it at all by anybody.
Well, that helps with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wondered when we were doing all this, what those things were going to be. Of course, we got a deal on it. You don't even know what it is.
Well, with them becoming 50 years old now, who's going to take? I mean, what's the next step for these? Just maintain it as best you can?
Maintain. Yeah, they just, that 50-year life was just something I had to put on paper, I guess. But, because, just, we didn't have any trouble getting this thing, this $1 million revamp up here. So
the lake itself is still owned by the landowner, or is it owned by the
all of it.
CRS?
Just an easement's all it is.
So if the owners of
the whole structure, water, dam, all is actually still owned by the landowner with certain restrictions that they can't do 2 or 3 different things.
Well, what if the ownership changes?
It has to change with it.
Okay.
It's part of the abstracts that they get. That's what we got a deal right here, right now. And the guy's illegal as can be, and it's liable gonna, it might cost him a bunch of money, because he plugged the road down tubes. And sold water to the oil companies drilling these horizontal frac jobs. And I knew it, but I never did tell anybody hear about it, but they've uncovered it now. They've been out there draining, they've drained 2 of them, siphoned the water out of them and found the drawdown tube for concrete. And maybe he knew that, the restriction, maybe he didn't, I don't know.
And the restriction was you can't take the water away?
No, you can't. You can do anything you want to with the water. You can sell it and do what, but you're not supposed to restrict the way that the structure was designed to work. You can't change that.
Can't change that.
You can change that. And he just bought it. He bought that whole property about 4 years ago, I guess.
Well, the people below him, if flooding occurs because of something he's done,
It did.
then they have.
Well, we've had 2 or 3 of those major floods since he's owned it.
Well, then, the responsibility lies with him or with the
It's going. I think
district.
they've looked at the restrictions and everything. Well, they're plain as day.
So
You can't. That's the main thing. You can't do anything with that structure. With that.
I mean, it seems logical for it to be that way.
That's the way that was designed and the way it's the way the easement was given. And when he bought it, he should have seen that, because that easement would have been in his abstract anyway. But no, I won't go there.
Well, it's almost like the board has to keep up with who owns it and go have a conversation with them, you know.
Well, we had something happen when project was first completed. Well, we had somebody that was, that 27 is the largest one we got in here. Well, we had a person up there that we didn't have a problem with the easement. Well, we didn't deal with him. We dealt with his dad about the easement. And he passed away before the thing was completed, or about the time it was completed. But anyway, we had a big rain, big kind of flood. And it backed water about almost a mile back up on me. And I thought, that can't be. So the DC here, then I called him and I said that drawdown on that side 7 is stopped up, because I said, well, the water is still over all our gates up here. We can't go anywhere over the roads and everything. And so they went out there, and this gentleman's son and a friend had built a structure on top of that drawdown tube out of cedar, and raised that thing up 6 feet, and put the water over everything up there. So I wonder if I looked at it, I said, you ought to get him as an engineer to build the rest of these things. It didn't leak. I mean, he sealed that thing up, but built a structure about 4 feet high on top of that concrete thing, and then put the water down through it.
Huh.
They made him take it down, and they had to do all that by boat.
Wow.
All kind of people in that world.
It's a never-ending process too, isn't it?
Yeah.
And even during droughts, it's, you know. important to have it work correctly then too.
Yep. Yeah, it's,
And your involvement cannot be traced back to that professor at A&M sending you home. If he hadn't done that, who knows?
no. I've been probably doing nothing, probably designing the damn airplane that won't fly or something. It blows up.
Oh. Could have been working for Boeing or who knows?
Yeah. And that wouldn't have fit me. Really. No, nothing. I was meant to be a cavalry pilot. That's it.
Do you still have do you fly? Do you?
When I turned this over to Travis, and I still had my 2 daughters, I got a $2 million insurance policy, and being a pilot, I've got aviation restriction on it, except for commercial, so I don't fly anymore.
Yeah.
And the cattle wreck in 1973 got my airplane, like the brokers.
You had your own till then?
Huh?
You had your own plane?
Well, it's 2 of us on it. We had a partnership.
Did you?
Yeah. Partnership.
But you have an airstrip on your property?
Yeah, yeah. We built an airstrip right there next to my house, and actually built it for crop duster, we were spraying the weeds, and actually built it before I started with it, for Mr. Talbot, because he was wanting to do it, and he didn't have a place for a strip, and Dad had cleaned off this strip back during the war, thinking maybe I'd land there or something, but that never did happen.
Crop dusting, does that still happen? Is that still happening?
Yeah. Not as bad, not as much as it did, because they've got these, 60 and 70 foot spray booms. Fact is, we've got one, and we don't ever do any crop dust, and now we do it all ourselves.
Well, conservation would get into that a little bit too, wouldn't it? Yeah. Good and bad, I guess.
That's part of managing grassland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And native grass in this country it's the most valuable thing you can have, because you don't have any input hardly at all, just management.
Mm.
Keep the weeds off of it, don't have to fertilize it. But the 4 major native grasses we have here, they're good. Get better gain, everything. I wish everything I had was native grass. We got a lot of Bermuda and other kinds of grass we have to fertilize.
Well, the native, you cut it and they feed it to cattle, or what?
We don't ever grow, we don't ever bale in native grass. Native grass, and it's called, what do they call it here? It's one of the best horse grasses. Horse people like native grass.
Just let him graze.
Yeah, native grass. They like it better than anything. Next to Bermuda, it's even preferred more than Bermuda is. And we bale a lot of stuff that horse people like to have, because we keep the Bermuda clean and bale it at the right time. It's good quality, but if you bale it native grass from prairie, what they call prairie meadow, they call it prairie grass. They prefer it. Horses do too, and they do better.
Yeah, I think monarch butterflies do too, don't they?
There you are.
Yeah, they like the prairie.
Yeah, I didn't see them come through this year.
I saw one on campus last week.
We usually have a migration there, or else I missed it.
Going back or going back north?
They're usually going north.
Yeah.
On the west end.
It should have already happened, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Or maybe now, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's
Usually somebody puts it in the paper, and we kind of look for it. But I don't remember seeing them this year.
There's less and less of them.
Probably are. You know, we used to have eagles in the winter. Quite a few. You would see, you know, like 10, 12, and you know, over like a 2-week period when they were going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I didn't see an eagle this year. I don't know what happened. I used to have a young fellow years ago that he was a cameraman, camera buff, and I gave him a key to come up there all the time. He had some of the most beautiful pictures of eagles. Had an old big pond there, about as big as one of these lake roads. That when it was built, they didn't take a big old oak tree right out of the middle of that thing. Of course, it was dead because it was out in the middle of that pond. But when the eagles came by, came through on their migration, that old tree would always be full of eagles, maybe 4 or 5 in it at a time. And they loved fish. They'd sit up there and look down and go give them a fish. It's gone now, and it finally fell over, finally rotted and fell over, so don't see it anymore.
Yeah,
But I used to enjoy that. But this young fellow, friend of mine, he'd come up there every year and take jillion pictures of those eagles.
Yeah, put a fake one out there.
And he loved that place. But that thing fell about 4 years ago, I guess. But that was the first place you'd see them. They loved that water and the fish. Had food, and a place to rest.
Yeah, there you go. Well, what's your favorite time out on the ranch?
Now it's when I'm in bed.
Oh,
No. No, I don't know.
favorite season?
I just like them all.
Like them all.
Yep, I've been fortunate to do what I wanted to in the beginning.
Yeah.
Cowboy or fly. Cowboy and fly. And I really missed the flying deal. I kind of cheated on that deal one time. And Travis doesn't know this. But I had a good friend out here that had a little Super Cub with Tundra wheels. He's big, what they call Tundra wheels, land them anywhere. And he called me one morning, I was drinking coffee. He said, "Creede, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm drinking coffee." "Why?" He said, "Well, come out your back door here." I said, "I'm parked here back here." I thought I didn't know it was an airplane. But anyway, he was there at the back door. And I'd never seen this little Super Cub. But he said, come go with me. He said, you need to fly this thing. And I thought, I said, I don't really need to, but I'm going to. So anyway, he said, get in here and do what you want to with it. So we went up there and I would look at everything I wanted to do. Looked at all the water gaps and what have you, and stuff, anything out of the way. And I said, "Eric," I said, watch what I'm doing. And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, just watch what I'm doing." And so I've got kind of a special place up there. I go once in a while when I get to one more thing. And I made a couple passes over that, and he said, I said, "Nick, can you remember this place, this path?" "Yeah, why?" I said, "That's where you're going to drop my ashes." So he's promised he will.
There you go.
Yep.
On your property?
It's an old, it's the top of a hill looking down into bottom land, Spring Creek, pecan trees on it, and real pretty. And it's got an old chimney on it, just the chimney's all that's left. That, well, we call it the chimney pasture. And it's been there since I was a little kid long before. Because well, that's where I picked my cotton to get my horse. They've had cotton in that bottom. And two old bastards, they lived there together and had this log house with this chimney on it. And I used to stop by there when I was going to school and when I was going down the mine. But I've kept that old thing on there. And that's where I flew on the hill. I mean, on the hill looking down on that.
Sounds pretty peaceful.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. We've covered a lot. Anything we haven't covered? You know anything about CCC camps in the area?
No, that thing was coming on when I got out of high school. Because I had two friends, real good friends, that went to CC camp when I went to cadet.
To the Marines?
When I went to Navy cadet.
Okay.
But this Lake Murray out here, I don't know where you know about it. But the whole thing was built for a CC camp, for those kid boys to have something to do. Well, there's lots of cabins and the museum up there on the dam was built by CCC boys.
Okay.
But I went the other way.
You went flying instead of playing in the dirt. You went flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But the best friend I ever went to CC.
Know anything about non-point source pollution?
There you go.
No. Bud Roads, ring any bells?
Yep. It's DC here. And you know, is Archie Welch still there?
No, I don't have
Welch.
his name.
Yeah, Bud Rhodes was after him. Archie Welch was the one that was DC here when we did all this. Because his son is still living, and I guess Archie told him a lot about this thing. Because every time I see him, he asks me something about a certain side or something like that. Yeah, Bud Rhodes was one of our best DCs we've ever had. Dud and Val.
All right. I've covered all of mine. Is there anything you want to add that I haven't asked? My last question then is, when history's written about you, what would you like for it to say?
What?
How do you want to be remembered? As a cowboy and a pilot?
Yeah, well, pilot. I've told people that. I'm living life's dreams.
And a good steward of the land, I would add to that.
Yeah. I think I have. I've tried to be.
Yeah.
I've tried to do what Mr. Tower told me to do. And you know, he did something there that I told him, I said, no way, Mr. Tower taking work. But he bought 2 or 3 carloads of rock phosphate out of Tennessee, out of your country, where they mine a lot of it. And this was right after the war. And he bought a guy that I'd known here in town, bought him an old, a new Chevrolet pickup, probably 3/4 ton, and a spreader like the state was using to spread sand in the wintertime. And he wore that pickup out with those 3 cars of rock phosphate, putting it on native grass, the whole ranch out there joining me. And I told him, I said, Mr. Tardy, that's one thing that you didn't read the book on. He said, yeah, I did too. He said it'll take 25 years for that that rock phosphate to be gone. And I had the privilege of riding next to the fence. All we had between us was a fence on native grass on both sides. And he has always looked better than mine from that phosphate. And the college and everybody will say that you can't fertilize native grass, can't afford to fertilize. But he did it with rock phosphate. That was about, and he'd gone through all the details on it, and it was available 5% a year. The only way it was available, being in the rock form. But it worked, and I got to see it every damn year. I have to look across the fence and see better grass than mine.
For 25 years, or it took
25 years. Took 25 years to use all that up.
Oh, and then what? You needed.
Well, they do it again, I guess. No, I didn't go there.
How does it look today?
It's not managed, so you really can't tell.
Can't tell.
Because after Mr. Toller passed away, it did not receive any management. Ours looks a whole lot better than his. But for 25 years, it darn sure did. And something that I couldn't see could possibly work, but it did. But he was a good man, a good neighbor.
You learned from various people, it sounds like, too.
And he was right when I first met him there. He drove up there at the house one day in his old Lincoln or whatever he drove, and handed me a sign from the Cattlemen's Association. Said you belong to the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association. I said, yeah, I do. He said, you mean you already joined? I said, you're a double member then. Said I made you a member of the Cattlemen's Association. And that's when he told me that we'll be doing a lot of different things that I'm hoping to improve our ranks up here. Because it hadn't been taken care of before that. It had been in that family and they had this and that running. And he changed it completely. And he's a big Hereford cattle man. And I was rather kind. I was Angus. but I started crossbreeding with Herefords pretty early.
Deliberately?
Yeah.
Not just jump the fence?
Well, not really deliberately. I was selling my calf crop to a Jewish fellow in Angevine in Geneseo, Illinois. He came down here one time. I saw him one time. And we went to the pasture to look at the calves. And we drove in the pasture, and there were probably 10 or better calves, and under a pecan tree out there. And he drove his old Cadillac or whatever he was driving, the old car, around and honked every time, got him up. And came back out, and he started back out the gate, and I said, no, Mr. Angevine, I said, the other cattle over the hill, and he said, well, they like these? I said, yeah, they like these. I said, so I've seen all I want to see. I thought, well, he ain't gonna buy them. But anyway, we got back to the house, and he said, when do you want to go with these calves? And I said, at what price? Then we went to the price. And so anyway, I sold them to him. And we agreed on a delivery date, and so when we gathered the calves, well, I had an uncle of mine had joined us. He used Hereford books, and we had 4 or 5 black white face calves, good calves, and I just went ahead and put them on the truck. And when I built him, I think $2 a hundred less for the block for the crossbred calf. And nothing was ever said about it. I called him and told him what I did when we shipped them. We loaded them on a train over at Davis. And so the next year, he called me and asked me how many calves they're going to have and whatever. And I said, Mr. Angevine, there's had more bull trouble down here. I said, there's probably 8 or 10 of those mottled-faced calves in there. He said, well, I haven't slept since last year about them darn mottled-faced calves. Said, you should have added $2 instead of taking them off of them. I said, did they perform in the feedlot? And he said, good gosh, yes. He said, don't take anything off of them this year. And so I started crossbreeding with, not all of them, but some. We keep straight black deal. But now we've gone with Travis. He keeps a lot of mollies too. And we go ahead and use the Angus bulls on the mottled-faced cows, and then Hereford bulls on the straight blacks. There's been something that's been accepted now. And but I sold, and that when I was in Korea, I still sold to Mr. Angevine. I never did see him again.
Just call by phone?
All the phone. And you know now, you'd send those calves up with nothing on paper, no check, no nothing. You couldn't do that now. People aren't that way. But that's what we did that with everything back then. No, I sold a set of calves, the whole set of calves to a guy in Pennsylvania, put them on a train. And somebody said, where'd you put the check? I said, I haven't got the check. He said, you're crazy. No. But that was the way things were back then. You better get it on paper now.
Yep.
You better get it on paper.
Yes.
But it was a handshake back then, was as close to the other guy. And I miss that.
Yes.
I do. I do.
Well, then I'll shake your hand and we'll call it done. How's that?
Anyway.
All right. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the week. Your pleasure.